I'm going to start with a poem for Bradley Manning. Do you guys know Bradley Manning? The young military guy who was at the origin of the WikiLeaks. You know, he was a young guy who saw files that contained atrocities and downloaded them and gave them away. I mean, he didn't publicize them. Eventually, they just ended up with people like the New York Times. But this is not really about that act. It's about the conditions under which he was detained. And as far as I know, he's still in pretrial, very harsh pretrial detention. It didn't get much press in the US, but the UN rapporteur on torture, the German parliament, came and tried to meet Bradley Manning at various times and were not allowed by the military. This poem is called The Codes, Command versus Bradley Manning. Because I stole the codes, they make me sleep naked. At 19 hours, 2 agents collect my shirt, pants, shorts. I never had laces or a belt. Their eyes burn behind identical ski masks, but they never speak, touch, or look at me. Perhaps if they did, they couldn't make love to their girlfriends off base, or they have orders. They wear white latex gloves, and their boots are wrapped in cellophane. One has tongs. I get a sheet. But at dawn, I give it up and stand naked at attention outside the triple-ply steel door. One guards me with a drawn Glock. The other searches my cell, though there is nothing, a board, a slop hole. At certain angles, he puts his hand over the camera, so he won't be recognized 1,000 years from now. I guess this, I can't focus, my eyes are forward. You will see a whorled thumbprint, a smudge of hair, then the tape will show my dangling sex, my pale belly, my thick yellow toenail, because I stole the codes. And it's always nice to read a poem that you're sort of scratching together. And this is a poem, I have a series of poems in which a woman writes to me from the future. And this particular poem, at this point she's Skyping me, and this poem is called The Screen. She Skypes, I work at a think tank now, I'm an intern. No pay but a possible reference and resume credit. I have my own badge, I hold it to the scanner, the gates open of their own accord. The windows are tinted and the light filtered all day down the AstroTurf corridors. We wheel carts overflowing with printouts, drought, famine, Kiribati overwhelmed, Bangladesh flooded. There is a monitor you may touch, cold as a lover's hip, and it will tell you the future. The fatigue of this labor is beyond belief. We download the model of the Himalayas melting, the Ganges and Yalu River that irrigate 1 billion farmers, petering out to a scratch in dust. There are further predictions, but we can't access them. Sometimes even here, you can sense the hum of traffic. Once, I swear, I heard a sparrow. Perhaps it was a digital cue in the background music, too. When I was a child, I had a recurring dream. I dressed for school. I had just learned to button in the grown-up mirror, where each of my gestures contradicted me. My father had showed me how to wait at the sign. and trust the bus emblazoned on the shield would actually arrive, huge and loud with strangers. I came to the bronze-shod doors just at the bell. I helped the teacher beat the erasers. The dust choked me, except it did not. I realized I was still deep in the dream. I had forgotten to wake. I had to go back and find out how. No clue except suffering and my father's gentle hand that smelled of shallots and Burma shave. But now, if I go back, it is to the simulation and the wind that moves across the screen at 2 miles per minute. Now I'm going to read a few Brooklyn poems. Brooklyn is a strangely mythic place, and I have been saying at readings that when I first moved to Brooklyn, which is a long time ago, about 40 years ago, but there was a guy who was like training his dog outside, and he said, "Heel up, you know what I'm saying?" And the dog was kind of, "Yeah, right." And I thought, this place is mythic. And the dog was called 7th Street because we lived on 17th Street. And, you know, if you were a person and you came from 8th Street, you would be called 8th Street too. People wore their hats at different angles on the different streets. Waking in Greenpoint in late August, we wanted so much that there be a world as we lay naked on our gray-striped mattress, staring up at a trowel mark on the eggshell blue ceiling and waiting for twilight, darkness, dawn, marriage, the child, the hoarse names of the city. Let there be a universe in which these lovers can wash and lick each other dry. Making shelves. In that lit window in Bushwick, halfway through the hardest winter, I cut plexiglass on a table saw, coaxing the chalked taped pane into the absence of the blade, working to such fine tolerance, the kerf abolished the soft lead line. I felt your eyes play over me, but did not turn. Dead people were not allowed in those huge factories. I bargained when the bell rang I would drink with you on Throop under the L, quick pint of night train, but you said no. Blood jumped from my little finger, power snapped off, voices summoned me by name, but I waved them back and knelt to rule the next line. Central Brooklyn. Behind the tenements lay wild gardens, a swaddled fig tree, a muscat arbor. I propped my 40-foot ladder against a shim and climbed and began searing the high porches with a butane torch. I gouged away dead bees, rosin, gum, soot from forges, cork. Once the lovers opened their blinds and watched with pursed lips. Hand in hand, her breasts swaying slightly, his penis limp, and I missed a spot. Then I painted white on white. When I finished, those streets were empty. No one lived there except the rich, chalk-faced in their long divorce. The dead reveal secrets of Brooklyn. We are frequently asked, what is death like tossing a frisbee in Prospect Park, making sure the release is free of any twitch or spasm, any trace of the body's vacillation, willing the disc to glide forward of its own momentum in a trance of straight lines. Death is like waiting in traffic at Hoyt Fulton, waving away the squeegee man with his excessive grin and red-veined eyes, like lying under your lover in Crown Heights and divining a stranger's face in the dark flash of her pupils, like growing old in Kensington on a block that reeks of dry cleaning, where you nod to 3 neighbors and avoid the stare of a 4th, though a single brindle-tailed cat patrols every dark garden. Remember, death does not last, not even a breath, whereas this city goes on forever. Cypress Hill, Gravesend, Bath Beach, avenues screened by ginkgo's vehemence of domino players hunched over folding tables, range on range of padlocked factories that once made twine, hammers, tape, and now make small, nameless articles which we use to bind, shatter, or seal, here where there is no self, no other world, no Brooklyn. And this is the poem that they reproduced. It's called Letter from Home. She writes, we would have voted against the war, but all the candidates opposed it. We joined a march in dead of winter. Weekend clerks gathered to applaud, clapping to warm their numb hands. In the tenements, hand-lettered signs supported us. The soldiers said, we will not fight. And the generals, there is no cause. Whom would we invade, she writes. We were the greatest power, perhaps of all time. Then the war began in the corner of the eye. At first it was polite and demanded nothing. Now to want to die would be a privilege. Now the war writes these words and can't stop, too. They practice torture here, she says, in the hospital, in the maze of corridors color-coordinated for the insides of the body. The laws allow it, but only as a last resort, only if the city might be destroyed otherwise. 3. We've created an external mind, she writes. It has made our world small as a withheld breath. If you want a weapon, you have only to imagine it. 4. Still a window blazes all night. Still the cars pass. I think I'm going to conclude with a few translations. These are from the medieval Spanish, or sometimes the Andalusian Spanish. To play my guitar for the dark girl, I washed my hands with mint. These are 2 poems in a woman's voice. Go ask your mother to put you in an alcove and light candles in front of you. Tell her I'm done with you. Another poem in a woman's voice. Run and tell your mom to shear and fleece you. Let her give you suck again and teach you to be a man. A few poems in a man's voice. Love you definitely. Talk to you whenever possible. Marry you. The fig won't fall from that tree. These are translations, I didn't. That idiot girl thought I'd cry. Doesn't she know the taverns sell little portions of happiness? I knocked 3 times at midnight on your iron gate. For someone dying of love, little girl, you're a heavy sleeper. And I'm going to conclude with one poem that gets back to that poetic topic of American interrogation techniques. And this is called Ben Adan. It's set in Bagram Airport in Afghanistan and based on an incident. It's in the voice of the detainee. The American commanded me in gestures, dig a hole. He tossed me a shovel, but the blade had dulled and the haft was splaying, so I had to rein in that strange, wild energy as I opened the earth to my shins, then my knees. At thigh depth I found a layer of black loam and a tiny blue snail that seemed to give off light. The agent called my name. High above he mimed a man kneeling, hands clasped in prayer. He must have knelt himself, because I felt the muzzle pressed against the shallow furrow behind my left earlobe, a part of my body I never knew existed. He pulled the trigger, but I know it is just a technique to soften my resistance. Perhaps in a moment he will lift me up and hold me trembling, more scared than I and more relieved. Thank you.